So my name is Essam. I'm an artist based in New York. I'm half Egyptian, Egyptian American. Served in the United States Army for 3.5 years as a geospatial analyst. I grew up in Maine and have been living in New York for the last 12 years. Went to art school there and have been making work about war and my experience with war and technology of war and surveillance and things of that nature ever since. And it wasn't until the run-up to the 2008 election that I really started paying more attention to politics. Shortly after my graduation from the School of Visual Arts in New York City in 2011, I became a bit enamored by the developments that were taking place with drone technology. And when I served in the military, drones were fairly innocuous, mostly an eye in the sky, sort of assisting soldiers on the ground with aerial observation, perhaps being used for targeting, but not conducting strikes necessarily, though the CIA was doing that sort of concurrently. And then when I found out the NYPD was discussing with the FAA the legality of the use of drones in New York, it really sort of shifted my perspective on the entire issue, and I really decided to make it sort of my hobby horse to make work about drones and autonomous weapons and their role in our lives and whether we should be even using them at all. Because I started to study sort of the morality of drones being used in Afghanistan and Pakistan and the number of civilians being killed and the lack of oversight in each of these strikes and how kill lists are decided, and I was really sort of put off by it all. Like, this technology began as, you know, a military war machine and then sort of became, you know, something rather pedestrian, like a toy, as everything in our society does, right? Like, that's how the internet began, and telephony and radio communications. So I then received a small grant to produce a large inflatable. And this project, which I'm here in Des Moines for now, is started at the United Nations earlier this month and was actually originally designed to be something that I would sort of infiltrate the Macy's Day Parade with. And when I started scouting the Macy's Day Parade 2 winters ago to see if I could actually make this happen, it became abundantly clear to me that that might not be possible, and I could very well get shot and/or like attack dogs sent at me, because the security at that parade is unlike anything that I've ever seen in my life. Which is comical, because you go to the Veterans Day Parade and there's essentially no security. But when we're talking about consumerism, a parade that is dedicated to consumerism, there is the entire military's apparatus comes out to protect, you know, the icons of consumer culture. It's an incredibly disheartening experience. But I wanted to reconceptualize how to make this, you know, inflatable something that could be impactful. And the Macy's Day Parade isn't out of the picture, but it's on the back burner for a while. And I've started at the United Nations by doing a die-in with the drone at the UN at the beginning of the first committee meetings on disarmament. The point of which trying to raise awareness within the United Nations and the disarmament community about the harm that drones cause and the harm that autonomous weapons will eventually cause. You know, the drone to me is also not just a symbol for its direct actions in the Middle East, but also a symbol for the technology that it's going to create. It's on the forefront of a movement in robotic warfare that is becoming ever more real every day.
Facial recognition. Wow.
We have facial recognition, we have, you know, retinal recognition, you know, obviously fingerprint scanners, things like that, but we also have autonomous automobile technology, right? So like, and that technology isn't perfect, of course, but in the quad-rotor drone space, things have gotten quite advanced. So these small quad-rotor drones, like the ones that DJI makes, research institutes like University of Pennsylvania and Duke and Carnegie Mellon, as well as others in Europe, I mean, they've gotten very advanced at creating swarming technology that the drones can communicate with each other. They know their distance. They can travel like in a large formation. Then when they reach a wall with a small hole in the wall, they can reconfigure, fly through the hole, go back to their original formation. And all you need to do is arm these and give them facial recognition software and allow them to trace and track and detect and target their own victims, and we're living in a brave new world. So really what I want to create is a conversation not only about drones but of the future of warfare and how dangerous that world can be for many people. I envision, we're in Des Moines right now where there's a drone command center. And these pilots are often flying drones that are flying around Afghanistan and Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia, and probably participating in targeting enemy combatants. And I'm sure there's a fairly large number of innocent civilians killed in those strikes. So I'm here in Des Moines, and I'll be traveling to Cedar Rapids tomorrow to recreate the action that we created at the United Nations. We're going to 4 different Democratic candidate events where many of the Democratic candidates will be speaking, and we'll be bringing the inflatable drone to raise awareness about the presence of drones in our lives and the effect that they have on civilians in foreign countries. I will be confronting each candidate as I'm able to with questions about their position on drone warfare, extrajudicial killings, the premeditated nature of it. I mean, this is essentially assassination, and based on pretty standing UN regulation and Geneva Conventions, many of these are war crimes. So I really want to get them on the record discussing what their position is on this form of warfare. Eventually lead to some sort of international ban on this type of warfare, whether that be on autonomous weapons. There's a great movement right now in the United Nations for a multilateral preemptive ban on autonomous weapons. I would love to see the United States perhaps not be a signatory to a treaty, because we very often don't do that, but at least not get in the way of the rest of the world signing on to something like that. And if the rest of the world signs on to it, the United States is more apt to at least participate. And that would be a step. Obviously not perfect, but a step. I would love to see the United States and the other major world powers recognize the immorality of the way they're conducting drone strikes and reconsider it as a form of warfare. I think, though, if there's a ban on autonomous weapons, we would likely see some shifts in the way that drone strikes are undertaken, because once autonomous weapons become sort of a reality, when autonomous flight and targeting and technology and strike technology is ready for prime time, if you will, drones will be autonomous, right? So there will have to be a regulation then that curtails the way we use drones if there is a multilateral ban on autonomous weapons. So I think what's the movement that's taking place at the United Nations is trying to use sort of a backdoor to curtail drone strikes, and I think it might be a wise way to make that shift, that change.